everyone. I am Allie Brooks. I'm a therapist and an astrologer. I'm a part of a collective called Sweetwater Liberation Lab, and I'm going to be sharing an astrological update. We are in between the new moon in Pisces on March 2nd and the full moon in Virgo, which will be March 18th. And when I was born, the sun, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter were all in Pisces. So I'm very familiar with this energy, for better, for worse. And I'm going to talk about Pisces and Virgo and this axis, right? All signs in astrology have an opposite. And so the opposites are really actually part of a whole. And in order to fully manifest the gifts of Pisces, it has to be balanced with Virgo and vice versa. And this goes for all signs in astrology. And one thing that's important to note is that I think one thing that gets lost in pop astrology is the way that all of these signs are in all of us. So I have 4 planets in Pisces. That means that this is my go-to kind of way of being, but there are other parts of me, right, that are very different than the Pisces part of me. And that creates that kind of inner conflict, right? So it points to the need for the whole, right? We all need all of these, the wisdom of all of these different aspects, and we need to all balance each other out, right? So the first word I want to talk about is flow. So what is flow? Flow, according to Merriam-Webster, is to have a smooth continuity, to proceed smoothly and readily, to hang loose and billowing, to derive from a source, to deform under stress without cracking or rupturing, a continuous transfer of energy, the motion characteristic of fluids. So Pisces is a water sign, right? And it's a mutable water sign. And so I kind of think of it as it's a mist, kind of a mystical, misty energy that is very scattering. So it's water kind of spread out. It's kind of this ethereal. It's water, but it's kind of like half ether too. And so one thing about Pisces energy is that it goes with the flow. It doesn't fight things. It's not direct. It's not trying to go in a straight line. It's flowing with the movement. And so it's this energy of allowing. And there's a piece to this that does not fit with our dominant paradigm that is about linear progress over time, a linear idea of time, an idea that's really rooted in a linear, logical, the idea of a direct straight line from here to there. And Pisces is just not, will never conform to that. And as someone who has 4 planets in Pisces, you know, much to probably the frustration of a lot of people around me, I don't go in straight lines. I'm flowing over here and then I'm going to come over here, and it's not a consistent energy. And so that's one thing that I've had to really accept about myself and to honor about myself too. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't need to balance that, right? The people in my life, a lot of the people in my life who I'm very close to, my cousin who lives downstairs has her sun in Virgo. My mom's South Node is in Virgo. My partner's South Node is in Virgo. And the South Node is really what you're so strong in already. So I'm constantly surrounding myself with people who have this strong Virgo energy that really helps to balance my Piscean nature. And it's not an either or, right? Again, it needs, I'm really into this word oscillation, where in order, it's a balance, right? It's like a bird with 2 wings. In order to get where we want to go, there needs to be an oscillation and a balance. So if I'm always moving in this very Piscean way without any attention to its opposite, that is that's going to be problematic, right? And so when we just had the new moon in Pisces, and so there's this embrace of Pisces energy and Pisces strategies, which has to do with transcendence, which has to do with creativity, compassion, going with the flow, divination, our soul connection, our connection with the collective consciousness, the collective unconscious, the ancestors, the energy of unconditional love, source energy, surrendering and trusting in divine timing versus planning or thinking that we have the plan. It's very much right brain versus left brain, right? Right brain being feelings and more of a cyclical way of arriving at a conclusion, where it's always relating particular back to the whole. And it's this creative, flowing way of moving versus Virgo, which is its opposite, is very logical and linear. It's the logical mind, and it's that left brain quality. Pisces themes also have to do with faith, surrendering to the not knowing, and trusting in life, trusting in the creative process, trusting in divine timing, trusting in something bigger than ourselves, something bigger than our ego, something bigger than our idea or conception of what time is and when things should happen. And, our capitalistic culture, which is very focused on production and consistency, that's not how Pisces works. So if you're experiencing a need to break free from rigid, linear, logical, constant productivity, constant consistency, right? Where you're expected to show up 9 to 5 in your work and have a consistent output. One thing I do is I'm an artist and I paint, I sell paintings, and sometimes people commission me for a painting. And one of the things I've come to know about myself that's important for me to communicate with other people is that I cannot force the creative process. I can't. It's not something that I can say, I can show up on Tuesday at 2 p.m. and be able to paint. It's something that is much more a surrendering to a creative process. What I can do is I can nourish myself and nourish my environment, nourish the soil for that creativity to blossom, right? I can take care of and create the conditions for my creativity to come through, but it's not something that is mechanical. It's not something that is linear or dependable in that way. So the idea isn't to throw out rationality. It's realizing what is lost when we have such a singular focus on the rational, linear, logical way of seeing reality and seeing the world. And this goes back right to the European Enlightenment and Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am. And the separation between mind and matter, mind and the body, mind and ways of seeing the ways of seeing and experiencing the world outside of the mind, through the heart, through our senses, through our feelings. And so when we create these artificial separation and we say, okay, only rationality, only objective, logical ways of seeing are valid and everything else is invalid, that is what is lost. So much is lost. And again, that doesn't mean that we say, all right, we're not going to ever use a rational, objective approach. No, that is useful in many circumstances, but it has to be balanced. And this is part of colonization of other ways of knowing and other ways of being, that we are undoing, that we get to undo. We get to release the idea that only knowledge that is arrived at through objective rationality is valid. And so part of this is reclaiming our other ways of knowing, which can be through our intuition, through divination, through connection with our ancestors, through connection with the non-human world, right? The elements, the water, the land, the birds, animals, spirits, really through the body. And Virgo is actually all about the body. Virgo and Pisces both are about service. They're both, Pisces is devotional, spiritual service. Pisces is selfless service to the collective and in the name of unconditional love and unity and oneness. And Virgo is service on a very practical level, whereas Pisces is very spiritual oriented. Virgo is about humble service on the very practical material level, making sure that bringing all of this compassion down to earth, right? And making sure that we have our bodies, that we're connected to our body's wisdom, and our bodies are a part of this ecosystem. Our bodies are part of the earth. And so remembering that we are part of these, we are part of this larger community in this ecosystem that from the ground up, right? And so coming back to the wisdom of the earth, coming back to the wisdom of our bodies, the wisdom of our bodies that have nothing to do with thinking, and realizing that these things aren't separated. We are so in this illusion that somehow our intellect and our mind is completely separate from our body and from our feelings and from our intuitive knowings and from our inner connection with the world around us. We've become so deeply alienated from the world around us. And so we get to remember, we get to quiet that paradigm, kind of tune out from that paradigm and explore our inner world, explore the world outside of that limited worldview. This is also the balance of verbal and nonverbal. Virgo is very, very verbal oriented and putting things into language, discerning and categorizing. And Pisces is always connecting to the whole, right? So it's Virgo is the particulars, the details, and Pisces is the big picture and the whole. And so there's value to both of these, right? Pisces is that the nonverbal part of us that is able to connect with direct experience before putting it into language, before abstracting it. Pisces is creative, whereas Virgo is analytic. Virgo likes to analyze and separate and purify and bring things down to their essence. What are the most basic elements, so that we can break things down and analyze them. And then Pisces is remembering the big picture. So again, it's this oscillation. So much Pisces without the balance of Virgo is missing a lot of detail. So again, this time is highlighting the need to, again, take this compassion and empathy and this deep feeling of taking this compassion and devotional energy to the collective and bringing it down to earth and making sure that people have what they need, right? People have their needs met, and attending to the basic building blocks of life, right? What are like, let's, from the ground up, what are people needing to feel safe, to thrive? How can we rebuild our institutions based on what people need, what our bodies need, what our souls need, and put that at the center? We are very much still in the last of this Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto has been alchemizing, transmuting the shadows of Capricorn in our collective. And this is within every single one of us individually, within our family systems, within our community systems, and on a societal level, on a global level. So Pluto has to do with secrets and shadows and power and manipulation and sexual secrets, scandals, these kind of things, corruption. And as Pluto finishes its last degrees of Capricorn, it's the last of a long process of this deep collective shadow work. Not that we won't be continuing to do shadow work, because that's really like a daily part of life. But this has been an enormous time of collective of these shadows coming to the light. And it's basically any power over politics, power over ways of being, power over dynamics in relationships, in organizations, in communities, secrets that have to do with money, deception, sex. These kind of themes have come to the surface for us to collectively metabolize, right? It's a lot. And that's Pisces. Pisces is the water that absorbs everything, takes everything in, and has to metabolize it somehow, right? And that's the opposite. Virgo is cleansing and detoxing and purifying. And so now that these things have been illuminated, it's the process of healing and transmuting and clearing this energy and allowing it to do its work on us, which the work that the shadow, the work that is supposed to be done with bringing these things to light and exposing the shadows within, again, from the ground up, starting with ourselves. What are ways that we have participated in harmful ways of being with the people in our lives, with all of our relationships, with the land, with the water, with the air, with our families, with our community at large? What are the ways that we are operating out of scarcity or insecurity? What are the ways that we are disconnected from our true power? And so now that these things are coming to light more and more, how do we process it? How do we metabolize it? How do we open ourselves to, I heard someone call Pisces, being a Pisces is like having a raw nerve to the world. And I so resonated with that. It's like Pisces energy is just this very open posture of absorbing and allowing. And it is, it can be very overwhelming. And so being empathic or opening yourself to your empathy and your ability to feel the suffering in the world. And, you know, obviously what's happening in Ukraine right now is opening so many of our hearts. A natural process of life and death, growth and decay, right? And so as these systems that are no longer serving us are dying, they're decaying, in order to regenerate Pluto is about regeneration. So when things are dying or transforming, they're transforming to be regenerated into something new, something more in alignment, hopefully, right? And so that's the work that we get to do, is when we realize the things around us and within us that are dying, what do we want to put that energy into? What do we want? And so with the Jupiter and Pisces that we're experiencing right now, Jupiter, the planet of expansion and abundance, is moving through Pisces. So it's this opportunity of dreaming really big about what kind of future we're living into. And that kind of violent war has also been going on in Palestine, right? And in settler colonial nations all over the world. And so with what has been happening with Ukraine and the way that it has pierced, global attention and has opened people, and it's overwhelming, we feel this suffering so deeply and we feel powerless. And we can talk about how this has been happening in other places like Palestine, where people are fighting for survival and self-determination, and fighting against unjust occupation and war, and protecting their lands and protecting their families. But when we are so open to the suffering, it brings us to the point where we have to remember, we have to get really good at our psychic protection, and that our emotional stability is our sacred responsibility, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't need others. We don't need, of course, we're completely interdependent with not only other humans, but the microbes, the plants, the water. We are not separate in any sense of the word, really. And so I think that's part of the wisdom of Pisces, is really helping to abolish this binary of self and other. So how do we do that while also honoring that we are responsible for our body? We are responsible for our physical separate self and the actions that we take, and without falling into the delusion that we are somehow completely separate individuals, we can still be responsible for what is ours. Pisces energy can be so selfless, so connected with the whole and with unity consciousness, that there can be a bypassing our own individual needs, and bypassing necessary boundaries and necessary processes. And I think that comes down to remembering that we are a sacred part of the whole. And so I have to first and foremost be responsible for this body. And it's easy to feel into the sense that on a soul level, I am expansive and unlimited, and have unlimited, unconditional love for all beings. And I am in this material world, in this body, and I only have so much time and energy and resources. And so it's that discernment and that balance. And I want to lift up my friend and co-conspirator in Liberation, who is a part of Sweetwater Liberation Lab, Alex Shabazz, aka Alex de la Coco. You definitely should go to her YouTube, Spirit of Coco, and listen to her messages. I'm so grateful for the way that she brings together. She has 3 planets in Pisces and really has this Pisces ability to take in the whole and incredible compassion and unconditional love. And she has her sun in Aries and knows the wisdom of standing for our individual dignity and for standing up against the ways that we sell ourselves short and the ways in which we allow power over, we allow our dignity as individuals to be compromised, and how we are taught this as a collective. And I think she has so much wisdom to share around that blending of unconditional compassion and belief in people's capacity to heal, belief in all of our capacity to heal, while also honoring and not bypassing any of the ways, not bypassing harm on any level, and for consistently standing for our dignity as the path to collective healing. Definitely want to refer to some of the messages that she's been sharing. So much wisdom. Again, follow us on Patreon, and I'll share the link below. And part of the work that we're up to in Sweetwater Liberation Lab is creating spaces and researching what does it look like to create spaces that are conducive to us owning our shadow, because we live in a punishment culture, right? And so there's no space between being accountable and taking accountability for the way that we harm and being a monster that is punished and alienated and dehumanized. And so if we have this punishment culture, how can we assume, or how can we expect people to take accountability? Because it is 100% natural for people to be afraid of being turned into a monster, having people losing their humanity and their belonging. We are all oriented towards belonging, towards dignity and safety, right? And so if we live in a culture and we've all internalized, deeply internalized punishment, we punish ourselves, we punish each other, of course we have a hard time really owning our shadow and admitting difficult truths to ourselves, because we don't want to feel like a monster. And so I think this starts with really a deep self inventory. And this is where I feel like understanding our astrology combined with understanding our, personal upbringing, our own personal traumas, our family traumas, our family lineages, our culture, all of these things, to understand how we are showing up in ways that are not in alignment with our values, which necessitates that we know what our values are and really know what matters to us. What do we care about? And this is what, Uranus is traveling through Taurus. So we're going through this time of changing our values, changing what matters to us. Taurus is the earth. I'm saying matters, meaning really we can't talk about what matters to us without rooting in the fact that we are part of the earth, and we live in this material realm, and that we have, again, we've disconnected. In that alienation from the earth, we have been disconnected from what matters. And so So Uranus traveling through Taurus, which began in 2018 and will be with us until around 2025, 2024 or 2025. Taurus moves through each sign about 7 years, is a time of completely reorienting our values. And I think this is happening through necessity as a result of climate change, as a result of the continued ecocide that's happening, the continued pollution of our water and the air, and the impact on our ecosystems, and the ways that our climate and our ecosystems are changing, are really going to reorient. Again, I think this is moving away from the shadow Capricorn that we have been in, of a focus on individualistic material success, on profit at the expense of the earth and our bodies, and greed, power over ways of being, to these Taurus themes, right? The gifts of Taurus are an abundance mindset, right? Moving out of the ways that we are so deeply motivated through a scarcity mindset, which leads to insecurity, which leads to power over manipulation, jealousy, these things. And so that's pointing us to really figure out, where does our sense of security come from? If our sense of security is dependent on putting others down or blocking others, harming others, imposing scarcity on others, that's not true security. And the wisdom of Taurus, all we have to do is look at the plants, look at how growth happens from the ground up, and that there is a natural process of life and death, growth and decay, right? And so as these systems that are no longer serving us are dying, they're decaying, in order to regenerate. Pluto is about regeneration. So when things are dying or transforming, they're transforming to be regenerated into something new, something more in alignment, hopefully, right? And so that's the work that we get to do, is when we realize the things around us and within us that are dying, what do we want to put that energy into? What do we want? And so with the Jupiter and Pisces that we're experiencing right now, Jupiter, the planet of expansion and abundance, is moving through Pisces. So it's this opportunity of dreaming really big about what kind of future we're living into. So with that space of dreaming, there's a sense right now that we're still in the open possibilities phase of dreaming, right? We don't want to limit what we want by being too specific about the form it's going to take, right? We want to stay really open, and new possibilities, new opportunities, new relationships, new energy will be coming in these next few months. And we have the opportunity to practice discernment and alignment, checking in with our bodies, checking in with ourselves, and remembering what we really care about, what really matters to us. And so it's okay to hold off on making commitments. This isn't really a time of getting too specific. It's a time, and this is part of Pisces being the last sign of the zodiac, where It's really a time to integrate, to go inward, to take inventory, to dream, to process, to emotionally process and move things through, whether that be through writing, creating, painting, meditating, dancing, transcending, dreaming, sleeping, drinking lots of water to keep things moving, keep things flowing. And then soon enough, it's going to be Aries season and it's going to be like moving forward. So take this time to dream, take this time to connect with your own source energy. And, that is something that's so important in these times where it can feel so overwhelming to feel into the suffering in the world. And this shadow work is painful and it's hard. And so it's never been more important. It's never been so important to connect, to protect our peace, to protect our daily rituals and practices that help us to connect with that source within, that source of whether it be love, hope, and if those things are way too hard to even imagine connecting with internally, it can just start with safety, calm, or even a neutral, finding a neutral feeling in your body, and slowly going from there. We, again, with this Taurus, Uranus and Taurus, which is going to be squaring Mercury and Venus in Aquarius, there's this tension between freedom and security. And I don't think these things cancel each other out, but they need to be balanced. How do we balance Aquarius themes of maximizing freedom with Taurus themes of stability and security? And so we are called to build a sense of security and stability from the ground up within this moment of complete destruction and what can feel like chaos and death and transformation. We still get to start from our small little bit with building security. And that's something that I'll follow up on in another video, and that we are exploring a lot with Sweetwater Liberation Lab, is how do we build safety? How do we build systems based on safety? How do we find a sense of safety in our own bodies first, right? This is something that's absolutely core to any sort of trauma healing process, which is what we are all kind of experiencing right now, is finding safety, finding a sense of safety, whether it be having a little tiny corner of your house or a little tiny corner of your inner world that feels safe, that you can go to reconnect with that feeling of safety when things feel overwhelming. If you liked this video and you want to support us, please like it, subscribe to this channel, and then follow us on Patreon. Link will be below.